day, everybody, and welcome to this Engaged Customer webinar together with our partners at Jacada on accelerating customer experience utilizing digital adoption and NLP, or natural language processing, as us people who don't really like acronyms like to call it. So NLP, natural language processing. My name is Steve Hurst. I'm the editorial director at Engaged Customer. I'm delighted to be joined today by Dylon Mills, who is Product Marketing Director from Jacada. Good morning to you, Dylon, and I think it's a very early morning where you are in Atlanta, Georgia.
It is quite early, but it's perfectly fine.
Well, thanks for joining us so early, Dylon, and I hope that you have a good experience on the webinar today. We're certainly looking forward to your presentation, and I know that in your presentation you're including, I think, 3 case studies on how Jacada are working with their customers in the field of accelerating customer experience using digital adoption and NLP. So welcome today to the webinar. Welcome to the delegates today as well. I just want to mention a couple of things. The main thing I want to mention is that it's very important for us that you are able to ask questions during Dylon's presentation. There is a green box at the bottom of the screen in front of you today, and please do keep those questions coming in. Any questions we don't answer during the 45 minutes of this webinar will be answered afterwards, so no questions are wasted. So please do keep them coming in, and I will remind you during the webinar to do that as well. I'm not going to say very much more because Dylon's got lots to get through today, lots of exciting and interesting stuff, plus those case studies, and so I will hand it over to you, Dylon.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me, and thank you, everyone, for joining and attending today. I hope that I can provide some valuable information here and provide a little bit of guidance around how Jacada helps our customers accelerate their ability to provide an improved customer experience. So today's session will be focused on that, accelerating your ability to provide an improved customer experience and how we go about assisting our customers and providing that for their customers. So just to start things off, to provide a little bit of a background around Jacada, we've been in the customer service space for a little bit over 25 years now, providing solutions to customers all around the world, as you see in this sampling here, solutions that are focused on improving customer experience along the entire customer journey. And I'll provide a little bit more detail throughout this presentation around how we do that. But first off, I'd like to start with discussing a few of the common problems that many of our customers face today. And I think, or I hope, that you also potentially see these problems. So I'd like to discuss the problems and then also talk about how we go about overcoming some of these problems and providing a great customer experience. The first one has to do with low adoption of digital self-service solutions. So what we're seeing in general is around 82% of interactions today, customer service interactions, still wind up in the contact center. Customers in overwhelming numbers are still picking up the phone and calling the contact center when assistance is needed. So despite these large investments that organizations have made in digital self-service solutions like mobile applications, comprehensive FAQs, service portals, despite the major investment, what we're seeing is still the majority of customers today are winding up in the contact center, or winding up calling the contact center when assistance is needed. And this is a problem because that tends to be the most expensive form of service, not only for the organization, in that they invest time and effort in employing contact center representatives and assisting customers, but also for the customer as well, investing their time connecting with a customer service representative when assistance is needed. So the first one has to do with low adoption of digital self-service resources. The second one has to do with poor experiences when a customer connects with a customer service representative. So a lot of times the result of this is long call times. The customer is engaged with a customer service representative for just too long. And that is because of many reasons, but mostly because the customer service representative or agent is likely dealing with a number of back office applications and managing these back office applications, and poor processes are in place that guide this agent through those applications that they're managing. So the customer service representative spends more time focused on managing applications, navigating applications, instead of interacting with the customer, resulting in long call times, bringing down the customer experience. And then finally, following a call, following an interaction with the customer today, a lot of times there are poor processes in place following a call in the back office that tend to lead to lengthy service times. An example of this, or what I mean by this is, let's take an example of a customer submitting a mortgage application. Today, that mortgage application has to arrive on a person's desk. That person reviews the application and does the back office processes to submit that application for acceptance or rejection. Those processes that take place following a call or after a call, after an interaction with a customer, can be streamlined and improved by implementing automation into those back office processes, so that those processes can take place 24/7, seamlessly and accurately through implementing software robots, as you can think about it. But getting back to my point here, the third problem that we see is that there are slow or underperforming or inefficient back office processes in place today that are really contributing to a poor customer experience in general. So what do we at Jacada recommend doing to improve upon the customer experience? Well, there are a number of things that you can do along the customer journey that we recommend you consider imparting upon to improve every step along the way. So the first interaction tends to be either by voice or by web. What we've seen, and as I mentioned before, is that customers are still in larger numbers calling a contact center when service is needed. So what we recommend to do in this first step is improve the self-service experience as well as drive digital adoption. And I'll speak a little bit more in the upcoming slides about how we do that, how we accomplish that. But as it relates to the first step in the customer journey, you need to consider improving that self-service experience so that the customer is more successful in servicing their needs up front, as well as getting more of your customers to adopt and use the digital resources that you've implemented in your customer service organization. So that's step one. And as I mentioned, I'll speak a little bit more about how we do that, how we accomplish that first step. The second step is when the customer does connect with the customer service representative, what we need to do, or what really we need to be focused in, is taking that agent away from the applications, away from managing, inputting information, and make that agent focus more on connecting with the customer, connecting on a human level with the customer, instead of navigating and managing those applications. So again, in the upcoming slides, I'll speak in a little bit more detail about how we recommend you accomplish this. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, those processes that take place after the fact, after a mortgage application is submitted, we need to streamline those by implementing automation in the back end. All of this combined dramatically increases your ability to provide the customer a much improved customer experience. So the next slide here is just talking about, in a very high level, how we do this. I won't spend a lot of time on this slide here, but what I want to mention is what we deliver at Jacada is a single platform, a single designer, where you can design these customer interactions, design the interaction from start to finish. And by finish, I mean those processes that take place following an interaction, and deploy that interaction across the various areas, deploy that same interaction across the various areas of the customer journey. So you can deploy that interaction into the contact center for the customer service representative to use to provide them with guidance on what's the next best thing to do when interacting with a customer, as well as that same interaction that you develop within the Interact platform can be deployed in the digital self-service side. So that customer can take those steps within that interaction that you develop from start to finish on their own to complete an interaction seamlessly by themselves. And then finally, the last part of this is that same interaction that you develop in the Interact platform can be implemented in the back end as well. So following an interaction with the customer. All one designer, easy to develop and deploy. And that's enough on that. So next, I will talk about a little bit more detail about digital self-service and what we do at Jacada to increase the adoption of digital self-service, as well as the success that a customer, when utilizing a digital self-service solution, will successfully be able to complete that digital self-service interaction. So the first part of this has to do with IVR. What we recommend, or the first step that we recommend, is to implement a visual interaction as an alternative to the IVR today. And we refer to this solution as visual IVR. And what it is essentially the same steps, similar steps that you would take in an IVR. However, it's a digital interaction that can be launched seamlessly and contextually when the customer connects via the phone. So as I mentioned before, a lot of customers are still calling the contact center. What we recommend to do is, instead of marketing these solutions that you've implemented, like mobile applications and comprehensive websites, FAQs, instead of marketing these solutions and hoping that your customers will use them, instead allow the customer, while they're on their way to a customer service representative, to pivot to that digital interaction without needing to download anything. Simply, seamlessly, and easily pivot to a digital interaction that can much better service their needs. So I'd like to, in this next slide, just show you an example of what that digital interaction looks like. So a customer, starting from the left and going right, calls a customer service organization because they recently received a large bill, a bill that is much higher than they're used to, much higher than normal. And they want to know why the bill is higher than normal. So generally what happens is the customer immediately, instinctively reaches out to a customer service representative, because in the past, that customer service representative has been able to help them in explaining the bill, assisting them with help if needed, and providing them guidance on the next best action, what to take place at this point. So when a customer pivots to a digital interaction, they're able to see the details of their bill, all of the details, why their bill is higher than usual, and potentially self-service their interaction, all while on their way to a customer service representative. If they're unable to self-service successfully, then we provide them a contextual connection to the customer service representative, so that the customer service representative not only sees who the customer is, but why they're calling and what steps need to be taken from here what steps have been taken and what steps need to be taken from this point. So to drive digital adoption, one way in doing this is by implementing digital in the channel that the majority of your customers use today. The second area of driving digital adoption and driving the success of digital adoption has to do with implementing automated chatbots and natural language processing. So an example of this, and actually this happened to me the other day, I was trying to connect my wireless printer to my laptop, and for some reason I was having issues making the connection. So what do? Personally, I went to the company's website and I started investigating why I was having issues connecting the printer to my laptop. The FAQ page that resulted in my search didn't quite provide enough information for me to go on to resolve the issue. But what I noticed was at the bottom of the screen, there was a chatbot, a virtual agent that was recommending I ask it questions. So I did. I started engaging with the virtual agent. I asked the general questions, and through natural language processing, the virtual agent was able to understand what I was asking and get me to a process that they have in place that they've implemented through this natural language, through this chatbot, that took me through the steps to successfully connect my printer. And we're seeing the trends in this. We're seeing a lot of organizations implement these chatbots, and also millennials in general tend to default to some sort of chat interaction so that it's something that they're comfortable with. So by implementing this, by implementing a chatbot that understands natural language, that can take a customer through steps in a service process, you increase the ability to successfully self-service, as well as increase the ability for the customer, or increase the likelihood for the customer to adopt those digital channels. So moving on to the next component, the agent interaction component. I'd like to discuss a little bit around how we improve that interaction between the customer and the agent. And the first one is collaboration. As I mentioned before, by implementing a digital interaction into the phone call, by introducing digital into the phone call, you now have the ability for the agent to see where the customer is coming from, see who the customer is right up front, eliminating the need to make introductions, streamlining the call so that the customer service representative understands at first point of contact where the customer is coming from and who the customer is, and then provide that ability for the agent to collaborate with the customer moving forward from there. So by implementing the digital interaction into the call and connecting it with the agent understands more about the customer and can better assist the customer in providing service by understanding not only who the customer is right up front, but what they're after and where to go from there. So that's the first aspect of improving the customer experience when the customer is connected with the agent. The next aspect is desktop unification. So this is an additional service that we provide that is all part of this offering. And that is, as I mentioned before, when agents are faced with dealing with multiple applications, not necessarily knowing where to go from there, it provides a poor experience to the customer. So what we recommend to do is unify those applications into a single interface that's easy to use for the agent, and the agent can, from there, know the next best action to take in providing better service to the customer. And then finally, the last aspect as it relates to agent assistance is automating some of those processes that are better fit for a robot. So what I mean by this is automating data entry, automating data re-entry, because a lot of times when you're speaking with a customer service representative, they're not only inputting the information that you're providing to them into one system, but they're having to copy and paste that same information into multiple systems. So streamline that data entry as well as copying and processing into an automated flow within that interaction to greatly improve the customer experience. And then lastly, the end of it, the end of the customer interaction, the back office processes that take place. So what we recommend to do and what we've done for many large organizations is automate that process. So automate the acceptance and approval of a mortgage application, as I mentioned before, and drive the processes that take place through automation, through robotic process automation, to improve the customer experience in that you're responding to the customer a lot faster. The customer's not having to wait 3 to 5 business days to receive a response to that mortgage application. So next, I'd like to talk about a few case studies, and I think maybe these are maybe with these, you'll understand that by doing what I've mentioned today, by implementing solutions across the entire customer journey, you can dramatically improve business processes as well as the customer experience and see financial results, financial benefits from implementing these processes.
Yeah, I think Dylon, the case studies always bring these things to life, don't they? Yeah, so it's great to have those as part of your presentation. Yeah.
They do. And before I jump into that, I want to pause and see if there are any questions that have come in at this point.
Well, we've had a question in which I think you've actually part answered, but I will ask it of you, Dylon, from Andrew Franklin, business leader at E.ON. Thanks for the question, Andrew. Andrew asked, how does pivoting to self-serve actually happen from when a customer calls a contact center? How does it appear on their mobile? I think you did cover that off partly, but it'd be great if you could answer Andrew's question on exactly how that happens or what happens.
Absolutely, great question. And I may have touched upon this, but it is a great question and good to go into a little bit more detail around how that works. There are a number of ways that this can take place. So when a customer calls a customer service representative or a customer service organization, what we are able to do on the back end is perform a few things. First of all, a carrier lookup. So we're able to assess who is the carrier, who is the cellular carrier that the customer is calling from, as well as the type of device that they're calling from. And generally, it's some sort of mobile device, iPhone, Android, whatever it may be. And at that time, we have a number of options depending upon what type of device that they're calling from. One is, and one of the most popular ways of doing this, is a push notification. So we will send the customer from the number that they're calling from a link through a push notification to launch that visual IVR interaction. And that interaction is all HTML based. There's no need for the customer to download anything. They can launch it quickly, easily, and contextually within the call. Another option, if we are unable to do some sort of push notification or launch the link for the customer, we also provide the option to, or we also integrate through SMS. So we can send the link to the customer through SMS. So the customer, if they press 1 to opt into this visual experience up front, they alternatively can receive the link to launch the visual IVR interaction through a text message. So there are a few ways to launch this visual interaction. It just all depends on what type of device and what kind of carrier the customer is calling from.
In your experience, and what's been the customer reaction to this? I mean, to me, it sounds like I would find it to be very, very useful and very helpful and make life easier for me as a customer. What are the customers of your customers saying about this pivoting to self-serve?
Great question, and I think I may go into this in a little bit more detail in these case studies here, as a matter of fact. But actually, what we've seen is a fairly positive response, and a lot of it has to do with the current self-service path that exists today. You know, a lot of people view IVR. I know IVR is a helpful resource for organizations and routing customers, as well as implementing some self-service capabilities within IVR. But the problem is a lot of customers perceive IVR as just a roadblocker. Yeah. So what will happen the majority of the time is the customer will either, zero out, and then at that point in time, the customer is connected with a customer service representative with no information, no background about who they are or where they came from. So they see the IVR technology as a roadblocker. But with visual IVR, what we see is a fairly high level of opt-in. And we'll go into a little bit more detail here in the case studies.
Okay. So it's unblocking the road then, basically, as far as the customer's concerned. If you
right, yeah.
Use an analogy, yeah. Okay. So that question, Andrew, from E.ON. I hope Dylon's answered it for you. I'm sure you have, Dylon, as well. Good answer to the question. And please do keep those questions coming in, because, as I said at the top of the webinar, any questions we don't get the chance to answer in the 45-minute stay. We will answer afterwards, so please keep those questions coming in. And back to you, Dylon, on the case studies.
Thank you, Steve. So the first case study here has to do with Turk Telecom. I think many of you are familiar with Turk Telecom. If you're not, they are a large telecommunications company located in Turkey. What they did, I apologize, slide is not advancing, just one second.
We've had actually Turkish Telecom, we've had Turk Telecom present at one of our events in the past, Dylon, a few years ago, so we know them very well, yeah.
Very well, perfect, okay. So they were very interested in improving the customer experience, and after a short investigation, as I mentioned before, what they did identify is that an overwhelming number of their customers were still using the traditional channels. So their customers were either connecting with them by phone, email, or chat. And even though they implemented, a very comprehensive mobile application, the adoption of this mobile application was lacking at the time. They wanted more of their customers to adopt their mobile application. They wanted more of their customers to attempt to service some of these issues that they were having, or some of these questions that they had before connecting with a resource within their customer service organization. So they decided to implement Visual IVR, and just some of the results that they saw after implementation was, and keep in mind that at the time these numbers had been collected, the solution had only been implemented for a number of months. But they received a total of 3.6 million calls following implementation of Visual IVR, and they found that 50% of their customers, half of their customers calling, would actually opt in to that visual experience. That's
a good conversion rate, yeah.
Very, very good, yep.
Yeah.
And then as a result of that, as a result of opting into that visual experience, what they found was that overall, they were able to achieve 75% self-service adoption. So those customers, not only calling, but the other customers that actually did attempt self-service to begin with, they were able to achieve overall a 75% self-service adoption rate following the implementation of Visual IVR. The cost savings right up front, right immediately following implementation, was around 5%, with a projected 10% cost savings, overall cost savings at year end. And then self-service itself increased 30%. So the self-service rate, they compared Visual IVR to the traditional IVR solution that they had in place, and what they found was that self-service in general improved or increased 30% over the traditional IVR solution that they had in place. And then finally, the last statistic that was collected here was around 81% of the customers would actually that utilize Visual IVR solution would actually recommend the solution to other customers, as they had a positive experience.
Very impressive. Yeah.
The next one here, I can't mention the name of the company, but I can mention that it's a Fortune 50 software company based in the United States, and they do business with they do business with business to business as well as business to consumer markets. And what they identified or what they were looking for a solution, the solution that they were looking for had to do with automating a lot of the services that were provided when a customer would call a retail store. So when a customer would call a retail store, the services that were provided to them at that time by a salesperson at that retail store were services like Wizmo, where is my order, scheduling an appointment, locating their nearest store, and then inventory, assessing the inventory that was within that retail location, as well as some troubleshooting aspects, and then activation and renewal. So these were things that, use cases that they wanted to try and automate, and they found that because they were finding that a lot of their salespeople, sales representatives within their retail location were spending a lot of time on the phone assisting customers that were calling due to these use cases. So following implementation, what we found was that overall, by automating these processes, 99% customer satisfaction. So customers were very happy with this automated process. Instead of having to wait on hold to connect with a sales representative that was too busy to really answer their question, to service their needs at the time, there was a 99% responding of customer satisfaction following implementation of the automation that was put into place. And then a 70% reduction in customer effort due to the visual aspects of the ability to navigate through the visual screens. 11% overall increase in self-service. And then this is the big number here. So the organization overall, following the implementation of our solutions, was able to achieve $4.5 million in savings annually through the automation, through removing the sales representatives from having to manage a lot of these processes that could be very simply automated.
How long have you been working with that organization for, Dylon? Is that for a few years now?
So
or?
This one is for a few years now.
Yeah.
The majority of our implementations are within the United States, but we have started expanding outside of the United States. But this one, I believe we have been working with this one for about 3 years now.
Okay. Yeah. Was a great saving. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then just towards the bottom here, a couple things that I want to mention here is 2-month implementation. It only took us 2 months to implement the solution, and then they were able to achieve an ROI within 3.5 months. Very, very fast implementation, very fast ROI.
Yeah.
And then here are, following the interaction that the customers take place in, some of the responses that we received, some feedback that we received about the new interaction. So finally, this one, another organization that I can't reference the name of, but I can say that it's a Fortune 100 health insurer in the United States. They also had a number of use cases that they wanted to automate. So use cases around finding a doctor, billing. They wanted their customers calling to have the ability to assess any payments that they have outstanding, as well as make a payment on any payments that are outstanding. Filing and also viewing the status of claims that were submitted to the health insurer, and then also the ability to not only view their ID card if they don't have their ID card on them through this application, but as well as do other management aspects like request a new ID card if needed. So following implementation of the automating these use cases, these are the results that we see. And I'm not sure, I probably don't need to walk through all of these here, but you can see the use cases.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I think this may be
an increase in customer satisfaction and a saving, which is surely the holy grail for all of us working in customer engagement business. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good time to pause for any other questions.
Yeah, we've got a question. One question actually, it's just a comment actually, and I noticed it on one of I think it was the first case study on Turk Telecom. Dylan, you mentioned NPS score or an NPS rated score of 81%, but Laura from Pin's company says that she doesn't think that's the actual NPS score because it's a percentage rather than actually a rating. Do you remember the slide that we're talking about there with Turk Telecom, an NPS score, 81%?
Right, and I think that was a mistake on my part. That actually isn't NPS because NPS would be a rating from 1 to 10.
It would be a rating, yeah, but certainly it sounds like a very high score, whatever it was anyway, yeah. Got a question.
Yeah,
so hopefully Laura Laura, that's good. I did notice that myself, actually, but it's obviously, I can tell from what you've said, that the Turk Telecom case study, some impressive results there. Dylon.
Okay, yep.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, question from Donna Kempster. Donna from Customer Insight Management Computer Center. Thanks for the question, Donna. How does the solution deal with the call when the user is dialing in from a desk phone rather than a smartphone?
That is a great question, and today we within that carrier lookup, within that device lookup that takes place up front, we are able to identify if, for example, a customer is calling in from a desk phone. So in that case, in that particular situation, the visual experience is not offered to the customer that is calling in from a desk phone.
Okay.
The customer at that point would take the process of following the voice IVR that the organization already has in place.
Okay. Thanks for that. Thanks for the question as well, Donna. A question here from Larry McAteer from Northern Ireland Water. Larry is a project manager there. For data protection, is the cloud based in the USA or the UK or Europe in terms of the solution?
So that's a great question. We work with a number of cloud vendors. Amazon is probably our largest, and that one is US based, but they also have locations globally. But we also, we can, the answer to the question is we work with you to identify the best path forward. So if a cloud-based solution is what you're looking for, we work with the nearby cloud vendor. And that vendor that is located within whichever region that you're interested in, but we also provide the ability to deploy on-premise as well. So if you're interested or have the proper resources available to you, we can also deploy on-premise as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Dylon. If we want to get back, I know you're close to the end of your presentation. If we want to get back to the presentation, then we'll take one or two more questions before we close at 45 past the hour. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so the next thing here is just, kind of a summary of what I already went through. So I won't go through it again. But essentially, what we recommend here is to improve the self-service experience, improve the success of that self-service experience, as well as drive the adoption of those digital resources that you currently have in place. Drive efficient customer care, so make the agent's life easier by unifying their desktop, by providing guidance, by providing automation, and then finally implement that back office automation that will allow you to respond to the customer a lot faster, a lot easier. And we provide this ability, the ability to implement all three of these along the customer journey through a single platform, as I mentioned before. Designing and developing one interaction from start to finish that can be utilized across to the entire journey that the customer partakes in.
Okay.
With that, we can address more questions if you would like.
Thanks for that. It's great presentation, and I learned a lot from it myself. And I was interested personally, actually, by you mentioned that most of the implementations you have and the ones that we talked about today are US, but you talked also about becoming more involved in other territories such as Europe, I'm sure. Can you talk a bit about some of those plans to be more active in Europe?
So we are fairly active. We have a number of representatives. We are fairly active in Europe. We have a number of representatives that focus in that area. Me being myself, I'm based here in the U.S., so that's what I'm really familiar with. But in the event that you are interested, I can absolutely connect you with a representative within our organization that can speak in much greater detail about that area of focus.
So the delegates on the call today would have access to whatever is happening at Jacada. Then I just wanted make sure that was okay, and that's great news for our delegates, I'm sure. Dylon, I mean, you've gone through a lot today, and it's a big topic, sort of the whole area of accelerating customer experience and using digital adoption is a big topic. Are there a couple of sort of one or two nuggets of kind of advice you would give for organisations, the people who are on the call today, how to get started? What sort of a couple of must-dos and a couple of sort of must-don'ts, if you like. So I think that would really help our audience in their decision making.
Yeah, so what I would say is start small and focus in on that first area that I spoke about, the digital adoption, digital resources, the first point of contact, the first area along the customer journey. Focus in on that particular area and develop out and implement solutions that increase the likelihood that your customers will utilize and successfully utilize those self-service resources. The second part of that question, the don't aspect.
What shouldn't our audience do?
So I guess don't start by trying to and this goes back to what I just mentioned. Don't start by trying to implement the full suite. Don't try and implement what you want to do is focus in on a particular area and make sure that area that you're focusing in on is comprehensive and complete before moving on to the next section. So don't try and improve the entire customer journey right up front. Focus in on a particular area and make sure that area is well served before moving on to the next section. Okay,
thanks for that. And one of the implementations, one of the case studies was implementation in 2.5 months. Is that typical, or was that a particularly fast implementation, or?
So that one in particular was a fairly fast implementation. But what we do see in general is a range from anywhere to about a month to anywhere from about 6 to 9 months. So all of our implementations fall somewhere in between this range. So about a month or a few weeks to somewhere between 6 to 9 months is where our implementations generally fall in between.
Okay, thanks, Dylon. I've got a question here from Chris Reed at BT. Thanks for the question, Chris. Something I'd like to know as well. Is there a video anywhere that Chris could view of a digital IVR, how it works? Do you have that at Jacada?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do. It's available on our website, but I can, following this webinar, provide a link to view that video.
And I'm sure also, Chris would appreciate that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also on our website, if you're interested, also on our website, not only a video demonstration of how the solution works, but also you can demo the solution. So we provide a demo center that you can demo the solution and actually launch an interaction on your mobile device and go through sample use cases associated with just about any industry that are out there. So you can find your industry and perform or go through sample use cases that will give you a good feeling or an understanding of just how the solution works and what your customers what type of journey your customers will receive in using the solution.
Oh, that's great news, and Chris has very kindly included his email address in the question. So I'm sure, Chris, that Dylon or someone from Jacada will be in touch with you very soon to walk you through that. So it's great that you've got that on your website, Dylon. We're almost out of time now. Just moving on to the last slide today. I wanted to thank you, Dylon, again for a great presentation, and also thank Jacada as well for sponsoring today's webinar. It will be available on demand for 6 months after today, so I think that there was lots that Dylon went through, so if you want to go back on any of the slides or listen to the webinar again, then you're able to do so, and that will be available on demand for 6 months from, I think, later on today or tomorrow. I just wanted to, Dylon, you did touch on robotics in your presentation, customer robotics, and just want to draw attention to an event we've got upcoming on November the 29th, looking at custom robotics and AI. We've got some interesting case study presentations at that event, so it'd be great to have some of you attend there. And also our flagship Customer Engagement Summit on the 13th of November. We're expecting 1,000 plus delegates to attend that event, and again, there is a stream there looking at AI and robotics, and there's lots of stuff in that summit around self-service. So once again, thanks to you, Dylon, for a great presentation. Any last comments from you, Dylon, before we close?
Just thank you very much for having me. Thank you, everyone, for joining and listening into the presentation. Hopefully, I was able to provide some valuable information today. And if you would like to learn more, don't hesitate to reach out to me or visit our website to learn more about how Jacada can assist you in providing a much improved customer experience.
Thank you, Dylon, and thanks, everyone, for attending. Goodbye.